What's up? I'm AJ, and welcome back to Gen Z Garage. Now that I've got the Corvette running, I need to make sure that it stops. So I need to work on the brakes. But first, as you can see, I'm in Florida and it's raining, so I'm gonna pull it into the garage.
Now that I know the engine is at least running fairly well, I can refocus my attention on the brakes. There is absolutely no brake assist, and even when practically standing on the brake pedal, the Corvette will barely come to a stop, so I have to fix this next. Unfortunately, as with many components of the 1984 model year, the 84 brake booster was year-specific and only made for the 1984 model year. It was an all-metal brake booster that became popular to swap into later year vehicles. This is because the 1985 and newer model year brake boosters were all made of plastic, as shown in the image to the right when compared to the 84 booster on the left. These plastic brake boosters would often fail much earlier and more frequently than the 1984 model year booster, so later year Corvette owners depleted the 1984 stock of brake boosters. To this day, many brake boosters that had been rebuilt or remanufactured for the 84 model year are still being swapped into later year Corvettes because of their long life and reliability. Unfortunately, this makes them essentially impossible to find, and they are almost always out of stock. When you can find a rebuilt one available, it's usually 4 times the price of a brake booster meant for a 1985 model year. But not all hope is lost. If you have an 84 Corvette with an automatic transmission like mine, the later year brake boosters will still fit. And if you don't want to go with plastic like everyone else, there are 2 parts suppliers now making aftermarket brake boosters that are all metal. Keep in mind, if you have a manual transmission 84 Corvette, the later brake booster will not fit, as it will interfere with the clutch master cylinder. You'll either have to find a rebuilt 84 booster or get really creative with a dead blow hammer on a replacement metal 1985 booster. Because the brake booster is a slim design, the booster must be unbolted from the interior rather than from the engine compartment. So I start on the inside and begin removing some of the obstructions, starting with the knee panel under the dash.
Before we can remove the brake booster, we have to remove the kick panel so we can get to the bolts.
In the early C4 Corvette dash, there are 2 footwell under dash panels. In this pristine example of a fully restored Corvette, which is obviously not this car, there is the carpeted padded knee panel. This does not need to be removed. However, the panel that sits behind it, which looks like this, does need to be removed to gain access to the brake booster bolts.
Don't forget to disconnect the floor light.
This panel is held in place with 3 7mm screws closest to the driver and a single tree clip at the back.
And it looks like we found an aftermarket powered door lock system. Unfortunately, I can't remove the brake booster bolts, so I'll have to remove the seat to gain access to them, starting with the seat cushion.
Because of the design of the C4, even a contortionist could not sit backwards in the footwell to work under the dash, so it's necessary to remove the seat. By removing the lower seat cushion, it exposes 4 13mm bolts that bolt the seat frame to the lower seat mounting bracket. And with that, I can now remove the seat frame and seat back.
Do this.
I now begin removing the seat mounting frame, starting with the track vanity covers. These vanity covers attach to the front of the seat track using plastic push nuts. These little covers obscure the otherwise unsightly seat tracks to provide a more luxurious interior. As with everything, make sure you bag and tag all the parts as I am doing. I can now access the nuts that hold the seat track to the floorboard. Unfortunately, the seat motor is completely shot, so I cannot move the seat forward or backwards. This means I have to use a combination of tools from my impact gun to a crescent wrench to get the nuts off. I'll have to remember to rebuild the seat track as a future project. Just take your time and the bolts will come out. With all 4 nuts removed from the seat track and the power control harness disconnected, I can just lift it up and ride out of the car. I lay out a painter's sheet on the floorboard, get on my back, and begin loosening the brake booster bolts. I don't remove them all the way, but just enough to create some play in the booster to see what else needs to be disconnected. The brake booster is held onto the firewall by 2 large bolts. Unlike many other cars, the bolts protrude from the booster itself, and not from the firewall. This means that the booster must be unbolted from the inside and not from within the engine compartment. As shown in the image below, there are 2 crush nuts that must be removed, one on each side of the brake booster rod. The leftmost nut is circled in red, while the rightmost nut can just be seen to the right of the brake pedal bracket, where the green arrow is pointing. The other part I will need to disconnect is the brake booster rod coupling to the brake pedal, but I'll remove that later when I remove the crush nuts. For now, I move back around to the front and disconnect the brake lines from the master cylinder. I'm placing this towel here to help catch the oil that will leak out from the brake lines when I remove them. Brake fluid is extremely caustic and will strip off paint from anything it touches, so having a rag to catch the drips is important. As I remove each of the brake lines, I use a flare nut wrench to remove them. A flare nut wrench has a little extra grip surface area which can prevent the wrench from slipping on the flare nut and rounding them off. Next, I remove the brake booster vacuum line. I finish removing the 2 crush nuts and the brake pedal rod pin inside the car and then remove the brake booster. Note that the brake pressure switch was already disconnected. Make sure not to damage it, you'll need it later. It may take a little bit of working back and forth, but the brake booster will eventually just slide right out. With the booster removed, I take the opportunity to clean behind it with a soapy sponge. I then install the new brake booster, opposite of how the old one came out. At this point, I loosely push it into place. I then get back into the car, and while my dad holds it in place, I begin reinstalling the crush nuts. If you do not hold the booster in place, it'll likely fall out while you're installing the nut. If you can't get someone to help you, you can always use tape to keep it tight against the firewall while you reinstall the nuts. Don't forget to reattach the shaft rod to the brake pedal assembly. Otherwise, you're in for a surprise when you later put the car in drive. You'll also want to apply grease so that it doesn't stick. Ow! Next, I install a new brake master cylinder that I got off Rock Auto from Dynamic Friction. This slides right onto the 2 bolts protruding from the brake booster. Make sure that before installing the master cylinder that the booster pushrod is present and installed within the booster. Without this, the brake booster will not make a connection to the master cylinder. You may choose to bench bleed the brake booster at this time, but I'm going to be flushing the entire brake system with a vacuum hand pump, so it's largely unnecessary. With the master cylinder installed, I begin reinstalling the brake lines using a flare wrench. The brake tubes should fit cleanly into the master cylinder. If the nuts are worn, rounded off, or leaking, you should consider replacing them. You can cut the end of the tube off with a tube cutter to remove the worn nut, replace it with a new flare nut, and then reflare the end of the tube with a flaring tool. Your brakes are one of the most important parts of the car. You do not want to skimp or cut corners here. Next, I reinstall the brake pressure sensor switch. You can carefully hand tighten this, and then carefully follow it up with a 14mm socket to snug it up. These are unfortunately no longer being produced, though it might still be possible to find some new old stock replacement ones if you're lucky. I'm reinstalling the original, which I've cleaned up as much as possible, but I will eventually replace this with a quality used one from Corvette Generations next time I visit. I'll have a separate video about that in the near future. Last but not least, I reconnect the brake pressure sensor. With everything installed, I now need to bleed the brakes. But first, I have to jack the car up and get the wheel off. As I remove the plastic lug nut covers, I discover something odd. The prior owner had installed 2 sets of locking lug nuts. I'm not sure why this was done, but it's hard enough remembering where one lug nut wheel lock is, let alone 2. One of the sets is clearly aftermarket, while the other is an original GM dealer option set. So I'll keep the original GM one since it accepts a plastic cover like the other lug nuts. Next, I remove the lug nuts with my impact gun. Thankfully, I was able to find the 2 lug nut keys to remove the 2 sets of locking lug nuts, so I removed those too. And with that, the tire is off. With the wheel off, I now have access to the caliper. I crack the bleed screw 3 small turns with a flare nut wrench and then connect my brake bleed kit. Try not to judge the car too badly here. I will end up replacing and rebuilding everything you see. But at this point, I just want to get it to stop well so I can focus on the motor next.
Attach! Ugh. Okay, I think that's attached. Looks pretty attached.
Next, I fill up both the front and rear brake reservoirs with quality brake fluid. As I pull this fluid through the brake lines, I'll need to make sure this stays topped off so I don't bring more air into the lines. I used a vacuum hand pump kit from Harbor Freight. These work pretty well and are fairly inexpensive. As I pull the fluid through with the hand pump, it fills up the overflow cup with the dirty fluid, which I've placed on the control arm. I will need to empty this at least 3 times to get rid of all the old fluid while pouring new fluid into the reservoir. When the fluid is clear, I retighten the bleed screw. And with that, I put the wheel back on. I repeat the bleeding process for the other 3 wheels, and while I'm at it, I also remove and replace the aftermarket wheel lock.
Before we end the video, I'm going to be replacing the second security lug because I don't know why there's 2 and honestly it's just really unnecessary. So we're going to be replacing them with nice new pretty ones.
Replacement lug nuts are available online or in stores by Dorman.
Thanks for watching. Now that we've got the brakes working, in the next episode, we'll be working on making sure the engine runs well. But before you go, check this out. Yeah, we're gonna need to change that.
Joyriding in a classic like this Model A Coupe, man, there's nothing like it. If you're into cars and trucks like I am, chances are that you know the fight to keep these cars on the road is a never-ending battle. The government targets vehicles of all kinds, new and old, lifted and lowered, rotted and restored. Your help is needed more than ever to safeguard our hobby now and for future generations. This is your call to duty. Get involved and let's keep driving.